Hey, folks, and welcome into the Horns 24/7 game preview as number 4 Texas hosts Wyoming at home this upcoming Saturday at DKR Memorial Stadium. Tommy Yarsh here alongside Chip Brown. Chip, Longhorns coming off a pretty big win against Alabama. First time that Nick Saban has lost at home since 2019 at the hands of his former assistant, Steve Sarkisian, the third Nick Saban assistant to beat the all-time great head coach. But now we look ahead to Wyoming. As I mentioned, the Cowboys come into town this Saturday for an 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on Longhorn Network. Last time these two teams met back in 2012, Texas won at 37-17. Texas is looking for their first 3-0 start since 2012. Wyoming 0-5 against Texas all time coming into Saturday night. Chip, let's go ahead and start with some of the keys of the game. First of all, one thing that we talked about before the show was how Texas is going to be able to handle being back in that spotlight, being back after the huge win against Alabama. Handling prosperity is what we put it as. Can Texas handle this prosperity? They have the chance to go 3-0 for the first time since 2012, coming off the heels of handing Nick Saban his biggest loss at home since he joined the Crimson Tide. Can they win the games where it seems like everything is going wrong, but if they just have to claw something out, kind of like they did against Iowa State last year?
Well, they better be able to handle prosperity because you just mentioned they haven't been 3-0 since 2012. And you've got so many seniors on this roster who lived through 5 and 7, had to hear about how Texas couldn't finish games, how Texas couldn't win on the road. And now they've answered that question, won 3 in a row in true road games. And, coming home against a really pesky Wyoming team. I liked the tweet from Jalen Ford earlier this week. He said, I've seen enough. The rest is rat poison. In terms of all the love that Texas was getting after rising to number 4 in the rankings, which is pole position for the college football playoff. Now we won't get the college football playoff committee's rankings until October, but this is a golden opportunity, Tommy. You beat a team like Alabama. You command the attention and respect of the college football world. Don't waste it. You've given yourself a chance to, put yourself in position. You're going to be favored in every game you play the rest of the season. Don't blow it. Build. The sign of a well-coached team is week-to-week improvement, and that's what we need to be seeing from the Texas Longhorns. So no reverting back to dropped passes, to offensive line miscommunication, that kind of thing. Get better. Show us that the Quinn Ewers we saw at Alabama is the Quinn Ewers, and the Xavier Worthy, the A.D. Mitchell, the J.T. Sanders, the offensive line that we're going to see the rest of this season. And like I said, I think there are enough veterans on this team who lived through 5 and 7 and have heard about how Texas is, the Charlie Brown of college football, with Lucy pulling the football every time Charlie Brown thinks he's going to be able to kick it. Those days need to be gone.
You mentioned briefly some of the miscues that Texas had in that 34-24 win over Alabama, the drop passes, the miscommunication at times. One thing that kind of stood out to me from that one was a little bit of a lack of a stronger running game. Now, Steve Sarkisian did mention that when they needed those 2-3 yards on the ground, they were able to pick it up, and they did. But Texas still, through the first 2 games, does not have a running back who's ran for over 100 yards. So far, Jonathan Brooks had 57 against Alabama. That's the highest mark that a Texas running back has gotten so far this year. When you look at this Wyoming game, Wyoming very good against the run, only allowing 2.5 yards per carry. That's good for 37th in the FBS. They gave up 93 yards on 33 carries to Texas Tech when they upset them in double overtime in week 1. How does Texas find a way to establish a stronger run game? And is this the game that they're able to do that? And then my second part of that question for you, Chip, is what else does Texas need to build on from that Alabama win, and maybe a facet of the game where they were at their strongest?
Yeah, I mean, what you want to see is, and we're probably gonna, see a Texas team without C.J. Baxter, who left the Alabama game late with a lower leg injury, and Steve Sarkisian said on Monday that it's probably, he's very limited. So it just sounds, and the team sources I've talked to say they're probably going to hold him out this week against Wyoming, which means Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, Keelan Robinson need to step in and get it done. And the team needs to rally and make sure that that happens. I thought, we saw a tremendous jump from the offensive line from the Rice game in week 1, where they're, miscommunicating. They're not executing very well, to what we saw against Alabama. I mean, Texas's offensive line, it was like night and day, and they were running much more complicated stuff. The motions, the gap scheme and zone scheme, the pin and pull. I wouldn't, take my foot off the gas against Wyoming, because, as you mentioned, this is a Wyoming team that is giving up less than 3 yards per carry per game. They've also averaged 3.5 sacks per game. And, they're 7 for 7 in the red zone with 6 touchdowns, 1 field goal. I mean, this is a Wyoming team that just will not beat itself. It's also one of the least penalized teams. So we'll get to Wyoming here in a second. But, for Texas, cleaning up the mistakes that they made, the sloppy pass coverage late in the game. I mean, they gave up a 3rd and 17 with a 27-yard pass that led to a 17-yard pass and then a 39-yard catch and run touchdown that allowed Alabama to cut the lead to 27-24. And you thought the roof was coming off of Bryant-Denny Stadium. You can't get sloppy at the end. And also, Texas, they got to be more effective in the red zone. They had a 1st and goal from the 5. They had a 1st down from the Alabama 13 and ended up with field goals on both of those possessions. So, and they missed a field goal. Bert Auburn proved he was human. Thought he rushed that one, but and hanging on to the football. I mean, Texas's first points came on a drive where A.D. Mitchell got stripped of the football, and Jatavian Sanders had a great heads up fumble recovery. We saw the 4th and 1 play where the ball never gets into Quinn Ewer's hands. The snap rolls back to where Jonathan Brooks picks it up and converts the 4th and 1. And then later on that drive, they failed to convert the 4th and 2 with a running play. So that stuff's got to get fixed, because Texas needs to show that it can run the ball early in games, and not just, I mean, don't get me wrong, that final drive was a thing of poetry at Alabama, grinding out, the final 7 minutes and 14 seconds to end the game with the ball in their hands. That was fantastic. And clearly Alabama, by that point, Texas had been able to wear them down, which is significant. These Craig Bowl teams from Wyoming are just gritty and tough as boot leather, as Craig Bowl would like to say. So Texas needs to make sure that they're not, suffering unforced errors and letting Wyoming hang around.
You mentioned Wyoming as a pesky team, and I kind of like that term. So let's go ahead and take a little bit more of a deeper look now at the Cowboys. 4th amongst FBS teams in returning production coming into this season after a 7-6 season under Craig Bowl a year ago. So far this year, they're tied for 1st amongst FBS teams in red zone offense. They're perfect, 7 of 7, 6 touchdowns and 1 field goal so far. They've seen a big jump 2 weeks into the season from quarterback Andrew Peasley. He's got 5 touchdowns and 1 interception on the year, in comparison to 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions last season. They were initially picked to finish 6th in the Mountain West Conference this year, despite the fact that they have the most players on the preseason all conference team. So we mentioned they're initially slated to finish sixth in the poll, but now they literally look like the real deal, undefeated. They're coming off a big win against Portland State, and they defeated Texas Tech in double overtime in week one. Chip, we talked about the run game, and they've done a good job slowing other teams down in that facet of the game, and they've gotten into the backfield and brought down the quarterback fairly well so far. Is there maybe another aspect of this game that you think Wyoming can make Texas scratch its head a little bit or get after them a little bit?
Well, Andrew Peasley, I was surprised Alabama did not have more designed runs for their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, who's a very dangerous runner. Most of his running yards came on broken plays. I thought that they would have more quarterback counter, quarterback power. Wyoming's going to run that stuff, the quarterback counter, the quarterback power. Andrew Peasley is a really tough dude. He's not exactly going to run away from you, but he is an effective runner, which means that he's capable of keeping the chains moving. They have a talented running game. It's an effective running game. They have gritty, tough receivers. I just think that when you look at Wyoming's offense, they're kind of whatever it takes, and those teams are scary. You need to put them away early, and Texas can do that by being explosive, doing what they did against Alabama. Here's the thing: Wyoming against Texas Tech benefited. Texas Tech got up 17-0 because of two fumbles that Wyoming suffered in the first quarter that gave Tech the ball at the Cowboys 26 and the Cowboys 32. And they converted those into 10 points. But Wyoming only gave up one touchdown drive longer than 26 yards to Texas Tech. And that was on the first drive. It was a deep pass touchdown, 33-yard touchdown strike. That's the kind of stuff that Texas is very capable of and showed at Alabama with the 44-yard touchdown pass to Xavier Worthy, the 39-yard touchdown pass to A.D. Mitchell. Texas needs to be explosive and utilize their deep weapons because Wyoming is pretty good up front. They have the preseason Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year and middle linebacker Eston Gibbs, and they've got some talented defensive linemen who are coached by former Texas defensive line coach Oscar Giles, who's in his second season under Craig Bohl at Wyoming, and then you look at the fact that Wyoming has a kicker in John Hoyland, who's kicked two 56-yard field goals already this season. Again, you just don't want to let a team like this hang around because they're not going to beat themselves. Craig Bohl should remind a lot of people of Kansas State's Chris Kleiman. Bohl won 3 FCS national championships at North Dakota State from 11 to 2013 before taking the Wyoming job. He probably should have held out for a better job because he's certainly a capable coach. It's hard to recruit to Wyoming, but he does have 22 kids from Texas on his roster, including 9 starters. So this is a team that does recruit Texas. They're excited to be coming to Austin for a chance to show that they can hang around and compete with Texas, and Texas needs to punch them in the face with their explosive play capability and make Wyoming have to throw it, because when Wyoming has to throw it, it's not always pretty. I mean, they just don't have the speed. They don't have the talent in the passing game to keep up with Texas. If they can keep it on the ground, keep grinding it with the quarterback runs, then this thing could drag into a low scoring affair. I mean, honestly, I'd probably take Wyoming plus the 28 points in this one, because Wyoming's all the things that we just said. They're not going to beat themselves. They don't get penalized. They've got a decent pass rush. They're 3.5 sacks per game. So this is a game where Texas needs to be successful through the air, and we'll see if Isaiah Nayer, the former Wyoming receiver for Texas, gets into this game and maybe shows what he can do. We saw him a little bit at the end of the Rice game. He caught a nice 14-yard pass from Malik Murphy on 3rd and 9. We haven't seen him much since. Steve Sarkisian really relying on his top 3 receivers and Jatavian Sanders in that Alabama game, understandably so. So let's see if Isaiah Nayer, who caught 12 touchdown passes at Wyoming in 2021, and then missed last season with a torn ACL here at Texas, we'll see if he gets a chance to show what he can do against his old team.
All right, Chip, time for everybody's favorite part of the show, our score predictions. I will let you go first.
Well, this feels a lot like the Rice game to me. So I'm going to say Texas 37, Wyoming 10. And I think Texas gets up with their high flying passing game and then just grinds it out. How about you, Tommy?
Well, I doubted Texas last week against Alabama, so apologies, Longhorn fans. But I think that this is a definite not bounce back. You can't really bounce back from last week, but bounce back in comparison to week 1 against Rice when you're playing no disrespect to Wyoming, inferior team. I think they do come out with that punch early in this game. I'm going to go Texas 42, Wyoming 14. I do like the Cowboys a lot, but I just simply don't think they can hang with Texas in this one.
Ooh, right on the line, Tommy.
I know. I'm a risky guy, man. I'm a risky guy. So if you need betting advice, don't take it from me. Take it from Chip. So that's
I did
pick
Texas to win last week.
You did.
I didn't give enough credit though. I picked him to win 24-23. I should have widened that margin a little bit.
You wanted a more interesting game. Certainly can't knock you for that. That's going to do it for our Horns 24/7 game preview of this week's Texas-Wyoming matchup. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Be sure to like the video and subscribe, plus turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content comes your way. For Chip Brown and the rest of the Horns 24/7 crew, I'm Tommy Yarsh. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.